Hello and welcome to Early Years Together, the podcast where playful practice meets professional insight. We're your hosts. My name is Deborah Brown.
And my name is Dr. Jacqueline Young. We're both associate professors at the University of Sussex with, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Deborah, a combined nearly 60 years of professional experience as teachers and teacher educators. And we're here to explore the joys and challenges of early years education. Each week, we'll share stories and reflections to support early years children and those who care for them. Whether you're a parent, an educator, or a student, this is your space for thoughtful reflection, conversation, and shared learning.
And if you enjoy today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, share with a friend or colleague, spread the word, leave us a review, and help others find us and join in the conversation.
So, Deborah, do you want to start by sharing a little bit more about this podcast and what our listeners can expect in the coming weeks?
So we're very aware that there are a lot of pressures and challenges for those working in early years, and often not much professional development is available. So we wanted to offer the opportunity for spaces to think and reflect on the early years. Jacqueline and I often, as lots of people know, car share together. And in that space, we often talk about new things that we find out. And so we wanted to have a way to share those ideas with you, but in bite-sized, easily accessible chunks.
Yeah, and podcasts are great, aren't they, for listening as we do on the way to work or whilst you're doing something else. So we'll aim to release an episode every week during university terms, which means that this series will contain 11 weekly episodes, with the final episode released in the week beginning the 27th of April. So, Deborah, what's the theme of today's episode?
So as it's the first episode of Early Years Together, we thought we'd start with that really big question of why the early years matters.
So those early experiences really have long-term impact, don't they, Deborah?
Yeah, we know in the first 5 years, in that 0 to 5 age range, there are such big changes in growth and so many developmental milestones for young children. And it really is those lifelong opportunities that really can impact on children. We know that things that happen in those early years really matter and have a really big impact on later outcomes. We know that up to the age of 6, there is such rapid development in the brain. And we know it's that prime time for neuron growth. And by 3, the brain is just as complex as it will be. So we know that afterwards, those synapses can either be lost or strengthened.
Yeah, and, as we say in our sessions at university, the physical growth at that age is just incredible. So, in 1 year, a child, can increase their length by 50%. So it's a bit like you and I, Deborah, next year suddenly being 9 foot tall and having to deal with that and understand about where our bodies are and how to move our bodies. The weight doubles by the age of 5 months, from birth to 5 months. Speech, emotional development, learning how to interact with the world and everybody around them all happens in that crucial period.
But we also know that, children who don't necessarily have experiences that are beneficial may mean that they're under stress. So we know that anxiety produces cortisol, if I can say it right. We have lots of those words, don't we, in early years, which are always tricky to pronounce, but cortisol, and that affects the brain and reduces those synapses. So it's really important to ensure that children feel safe, secure, happy and healthy. But we also know that we need to really be aware that there's that issue of children that might get left behind for one reason or the other. Gaps in learning appear in young children from a very young age. And prevention and being aware is much better than that cure. So we need to really make sure that children's development remains on track rather than children getting left behind at that crucial stage.
Yeah, so, when we think about disadvantage and poverty, we know that those gaps start appearing at a really young age. And lots has been written in research about the links between language delay and poverty. You know, the UK's Millennium Cohort Study, which was a huge study of 18,000 children, you know, that found a gap in vocabulary in children from the poorest backgrounds equal to around 1 year's development by the age of 3 and 5. So that's just incredible. So what we do as practitioners in this really crucial period really matters. So, you know, Deborah, what do you think's out there to support practitioners in their own professional development?
Well, there are so many ways that practitioners can engage in finding out more information and to get the support that they might need to consider and reflect alternatively on what's going on. I mean, there's the traditional ways that you can learn, which, you know, are the ways that, years and years ago would be, you know, right at the forefront.
We're talking paper-based.
We're talking paper-based and not electronic. But things like Nursery World, you know, even just getting updates from Nursery World with, you know, what's going on in the world of early years education can be really beneficial, as are other magazines such as Early Years Educator.
Yeah, then we've got those other sort of professional development websites, which, you know, are really quite amazing when you start digging around in them. So there's things like the Education Endowment Fund, the EEF, as some of us might know it. Those websites, there's some really fantastic little video clips on there, don't they, that we actually use with the students quite a bit in sessions.
Yeah, so do look out for something called the Early Years Toolkit, because that's where you'll find that. And often the EEF work is really kind of backed by research as well. So they do a lot of work looking at analysing the research that goes alongside the work that is shared on the website.
And then you've got the old classics as well, the Birth to 5 Matters guidance, things like Help for Early Years Providers.
And then there's also the child development training. So if there's an aspect of early years that you think, actually, you know, I just want to kind of touch up my knowledge or find out a little bit more, there's that training that you can access as well.
So you've also got this sort of DFE type released documents. So things like the reading framework there, although that is predominantly aimed at older children, there are quite strong sections of that are still relevant for the early years age range.
And there's also YouTube. So, you know, even looking on YouTube for the DF, Department for Education, I was going to use an acronym there because we just do it, don't we, naturally. But the Department for Education, the DFE, they have the areas of learning related to the early years foundation stage. So there are videos on there to support aspects of learning. There's also Ofsted research reports and videos that are shared on YouTube with snippets of information. So
things like best start in life, getting it right from the start, you know, how to work with babies and toddlers. All these are great ways to sort of touch base. Then, of course, not to be forgotten is the LEA training that might be available, local authority stuff.
Yeah, and I'm sure many people will be involved in network meetings. So really that kind of way of working with others and learning from others' practice and experience is really key.
And then we've also got all the formalised training. So things like your apprenticeships, your level 2, your level 3 apprenticeship. We know that the government is just about to launch a new initiative where it might be possible to get degree level apprenticeships in the coming few years. Then you've got courses like the course that we run that are for early years teacher training. All of these ways might feed into your ongoing professional development.
Don't forget also there are some professional network membership bodies. We know that one of our students, for example, went on to work for the Institute of Early Years. So there are, you know, she writes content for the Institute, and so there may be information on there as well.
And then you've always got those other forms of social media communication. So connecting with people through LinkedIn. Do look us up and say hi to us. We're always, you know, really happy to connect with other early years professionals. X, Instagram, Pinterest, all these ways of really supplementing our own professional development.
And obviously, this is the shameless plug for our own podcast, of course. So, as I say, do keep listening, because we'll bring in future episodes lots more information to you.
And of course, we can't forget TACTIC, which stands for, you need to help me out, Deborah, Together and
Committed to Young
Children.
Yeah, that's
a website with journals, all kinds of webinars and training, blogs. It's a really helpful and useful resource.
There's also, I've just remembered, Jacqueline, just through my work that I did post-COVID, out of the COVID recovery programme came the Stronger Practice Hubs. So locally there are hubs that support practitioners with meetings, different forms of training. So it's really worth looking up your local Stronger Practice Hub to get some professional development opportunities as well.
And I think that brings us to the end of today's episode.
I really hope that this episode's given you a fresh lens on why the early years matters, and also given you some ideas of things that you might be able to do in terms of where you might be able to access some resources and information so that you can really make a difference.
So next week we'll be diving into what makes a high quality interaction between adults and early years children, what that means, and why it's the real heartbeat of early years learning.
So until then, thank you for joining us on the Early Years Together. And don't forget to subscribe, share with a friend or colleague, and leave us a review. We'd really love to hear from you.
So take care, and we will see you next time.